Well, that is a little bit of a mess there. Doesn't seem like I did a good job. We got a package. That was closer than I wanted to the old neck. I'm obviously a genius. Cut towards you. Welcome back to the Lost Cause Ranch. We're back on the LS3 swap Defender today. In the last couple weeks here at the ranch, we've been collecting various wiring supplies. Not just this stuff here from McMaster Car, but we've also been piling up some stuff to get the new shop electrified so we can use it, because it's kind of worthless without power. I mean, we do have my nice portable power setup. But enough of that. Today, we're gonna continue working on our custom harness on the little Defender. Being we had to rearrange some stuff in the little garage for the laser to fit, we butted the two benches together, and that is gonna work out nicely for the wiring. It'll give us a nice long flat surface to be able to lay out the harness. We have most of the supplies we need right here to continue on building out that harness. For our application, we are gonna switch most of the connectors over to the Deutsch style weather watertight connectors. They have a nice little seal front and rear, so we shouldn't have any water intrusion problems on the wiring that will potentially see weather and water. So we have an assortment of connectors here, so we have whatever we need with the number of pins. And these guys use a complete captive pin, so it'll be crimped all the way around versus the little fold over style. I personally just like these a little bit better. I also like the insulator setup on the Deutsch connectors versus, say, a weather pack. So that's what I'm gonna use. We also got our wire loom so we can protect that new harness fully. 3 different diameters. And then for that loom, we will be using the fabric style friction tape instead of the vinyl PVC electrical tape. This is the stuff I prefer to use when we make our harnesses. A lot of the European manufacturers use this on the OEM stuff. I think the braided loom fabric tape is a much nicer combo than the plastic corrugated stuff that most people use, including General Motors on the engine harness for the LS3. But we are going to start with the rear harness, which is mainly lights to the back of the Defender. So we're going to set those in place so we can route that looped up stuff the correct length. But before we can do that, we need to prep all our rear lights and install our connectors. The reverse lights have nothing. License plate, nothing, but the rest of them have the OEM style connector, and we will chop those off. All right, so we have our wires stripped and prepped. First step on the connector is to install our little contacts. And with the Deutsch connectors, they have a special crimper that crimps all the way around on the 360-degree connector pin. And it's pretty simple. We just load it in like that, insert it all the way in, then we just ratchet it closed, and it puts 4 little crimp indents around the barrel, and we just slide the pins right on through that rubber until it clicks, and they'll be in through. Then we just have a little lock pin that we insert into that slot inside the connector. Sits in like that. We'll just pop her in. And the female connector is complete. We have our weather tight seal on the back side, our pins locked in on the front. Got our rear lights looking nice with our new connectors. Before we get too deep in, we got a quick pit stop. Maybe adding some ranch stuff to the ranch.
And now 185, at 185, and another gonna be 185 pounds in, at 185, we're on the road to 200 either way. You can cut down any way you like, we're on the road to 200,000 at 11 this one. Round of applause, he's been a worthy player. The tractor sold for Lars White, 190,000 $1,000 Laura's way.
Now that the sun is out, we're thinking spring, and when you think spring, you think tractors. And when you're at a ranch, you need tractors. Maybe we'll have to add one and go farming. Nah, we're just down at Meekum checking out some of the neat tractors going through. I didn't know old tractors were worth a lot of money, but I suppose. But on other good news, Site Supervisor Sasha is back outside now that it is sunny and we can kind of feel spring in the air. She is wanting to know when we're getting rolling on the shop again so she can keep an eye on us. So there is an idea of what the rear lights are going to look like. This guy probably gonna sit a little more like that so we can actually shine down on the license plate, but we're replacing our rear panels when I pull the box back off, so I'm not too concerned about drilling holes and bolting these in. We just need them in the vicinity for the length on the wiring harness so we have the connectors in the right spot and it can tuck neatly away so we don't have a bunch of looped wires like so. We don't need everything to look all janky. So the nice thing about using this painless harness is it is labeled with what each circuit is. Tail section to left turn signal / brake. The only thing we're missing that we have fed through right now is we have to add a reverse light circuit to that. So we'll have one more wire coming through that'll branch from the right to the left up to the front. All right, so you can see where the wire comes out of the frame there, or chassis for you Brits. Now what we need to do is route it along the rear cross member where we're gonna mount it, run it up to each of the lights. Then we can trim it down to the correct length. Then pop our connector on there. This is the male side to mate up with that female side. We do not have a ground running to the back from the front. So what we are gonna do is on the ground, we'll have two separate ones on the rear, one for each side. And we're gonna tie, on this side, we have 4 lights to tie together. So we're gonna make a ground with 4 individual wires that tie into one lug that we can bolt to a sufficient ground on the chassis. And that will take care of that. So we have our white wiring and we're gonna use this for a reverse light. I figure reverse light is white, so white's a good color. So this, along with our brake light wiring, is gonna have to be wide off, one for the driver's side, one for the passenger side. But before we mess with either of those, we're gonna route our turn signals and our tail lights because those are individually wired on this, and that way we can get those out of the way. We'll check this and make sure I get the polarity right. That'd be good. So we have one side done. We just need to repeat this 7 times. I gotta crawl back in here. Good thing I'm small. All right, now on to the brake light, and we need to split this guy off to each side. So the way we will do that is we're gonna chop it back here. Then we're gonna use a splice connector, 1 in, 2 out. Before we connect this to the other wire, we are gonna slide our heat shrink on. All right, so it's a little jumbled mess in here right now, but we have all our connectors in place with the power side all wired up. We're on the driver's side here, so we have 4 connectors total. We are gonna jump 4 individual ground wires with this wire here, tie them into one lug. Stuck that right in there. All right, so there is our little sub harness for the grounds. We got stuff falling in the background. We got our pins all connected. Heat shrink around that so we can snap this guy into place. All right, now we are up at the front here and we need to add this connector right here. That'll be underneath the seat box. So that way this is accessible without pulling the floorboard up. Not that you're gonna pull the wiring a ton, but if we're doing it, we might as well do it that way. So all I'm gonna do is chop all of them here. So we got 5 here, and then we also have the white reverse light one to add in here. So we got a 6-place connector. All right, so orientation in the wiring on the connector makes no difference. So we'll just slam those guys in where we want. We'll just have to match up this side to this side is all. So now we just have to feed everything back through. Well, that is a little bit of a mess there. Doesn't seem like I did a good job. So this guy is a little messy right now, I will admit that. But it's gonna come together pretty quick and look fairly clean, hopefully. That's the plan at least. But first what we need to do is we have this white wire for the reverse lights, like I mentioned before. We need to run a length of that up to the front here into this 6-pin connector. So we have our front section, the bulk of it before it splits off, all tied together. That reverse wire grouped in there. So for wire loom, I usually use a mixture of 1/4 inch for the small stuff, 1/2 inch for the bulk of it. We also have some 3/4 for some of the thicker and bigger bundles of wire. I like the braided stuff, like I said earlier in the video, much nicer than the corrugated plastic, but I also like to use the split loom. That way we don't have to plan as far ahead on what we're gonna loom up. They make this in solid stuff where it doesn't split apart like that. The only problem is when you're doing connectors and different branches, you have to have the loom on before the connectors. This way, we gotta do it after, and we're taping it anyways. And if you get some quality stuff like this stuff from McMaster-Carr, it's got some good spring to it and will stay nice and tight. So we're just gonna start feeding that guy in. Just kind of tuck it in on both sides. It'll kind of wrap it twice almost. That part is cleaned up. We got our 1/2 inch loom on the section that'll be in the frame rail. Splits off here, right where it exits the frame rail. There is our passenger side taillight harness. For that, we got the smaller 1/4 inch loom. That's the ticket. And there we go! I guess I should say, almost done. Just about forgot to lock the pins in. And on the male connector, in addition to holding the pins in, it retains the insulator as well. You guys will have to tell me whether you agree or not, but I think we got a pretty good result out of this little harness. We have our ground split off on each side. The harness is all loomed up, nice and tidy. Now this is just a Defender 90. There's a ton of them out there and there is a fair amount of options for wiring. So we could have chose the easy route and just bought something off the shelf. But let me tell you, I get a lot of satisfaction in building stuff here at the ranch. And I think this harness is just as good, if not better, than a lot of the options we have. And being we're putting an LS3 and modifying quite a bit on this thing, we'd be chopping apart an off-the-shelf harness anyways, so why not just do it ourselves? So there's a look into how we go about doing the wiring here at the ranch. If I roll it all up, it looks like we ordered it. And that's always the goal when you build something, make it look like you ordered it from a professional. That being said, appreciate you guys watching, appreciate you subscribing, and we will catch you on the next one. which will more than likely be more wiring, but of the building variety. That I'm new to. I've done this before. Building wiring, not so much. Hopefully no fires. Have a good night. It is awful nice that we can be in here working on the Defender while this guy's doing some work too.